Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. The silence was thick as black velvet, stifling, almost sacred. Only a few stifled sobs, the discreet scraping of a handkerchief against a wet cheek, and the steady sound of a swinging censer broke this funereal quiet. In the icy nave of the Church of St. Anthony, grief seemed suspended in the air, as palpable as dust in the rays of light filtering through the stained glass windows. Dozens of people stood there, motionless, heads bowed, hands clasped or clutching bouquets of white lilies. Some faces were closed, others streaming with tears. Strangers and loved ones gathered around the same emptiness, the same painful mystery, the death of Elise Dubois. 32 years old, 8 months pregnant. A brutal, unjust, incomprehensible end. They said a sudden heart attack, which occurred one quiet morning. No warning signs, no goodbyes. The announcement had shaken the entire neighborhood. Elise was well-liked, bright, generous. A life that still held so much promise. A child who would never see the light of day. A tragedy, they all said. In the center of the choir, under a canopy of white flowers, the light oak coffin stood enthroned, covered with an embroidered ivory veil. 2 candles burned slowly at his sides. And in this coffin, which everyone believed to be carrying a woman was breathing. Elise was not dead. Not really. Her mind floated somewhere between 2 worlds. She perceived, without understanding, blurry shadows, distant sounds, a heaviness in every muscle, and a cold, icy, that crept into her bones. She wanted to move, to scream, but her body still refused. Then, little by little, the sounds became clearer. She recognized Julian's voice, her husband. She didn't suffer. A sudden attack. That's what they said. His voice was calm, almost peaceful, not that of a broken man, but poised, controlled. Another voice answered him, sweet, sweet as poison, that of Camille, her best friend since high school. And the baby? A heavy silence followed. Better this way. It wasn't mine anyway. And shock, like an inner crash. If she could have screamed, she would have. But only her heart beat faster, painfully, pounding against her ribcage like a war drum. She understood. Doubt, betrayal, lies. In the gloom of his coffin, his fingers trembled, light as feathers lifted by a breeze. Her eyelids half lifted. The painted ceiling of the church appeared blurred, veiled with tears and confusion. The air returned slowly, hot, like fire sliding down her throat. Her chest heaved. She was breathing. Faintly, but she was breathing. Its members were numb, stiff, as if imprisoned in a straitjacket. A dull panic rose. Her mind was on fire. She was alive, and we had it buried. Suddenly, soft footsteps approached. Someone leaned over her. Julian's familiar scent brushed her nostrils. His cold hand rested on her forehead. A tear rolled down his cheek onto Elise's icy skin. But something was wrong. It was not a tear of mourning. No sadness. It was almost a sigh of relief. Or a smile. Then he walked away. The ceremony resumed. The priest spoke the last words. Sobs rose again. The coffin was slowly closed. A final snap echoed through the church like a hammer blow. A sealed burial. A truth erased. But nobody lives her fingers move, nor her eyelids tremble. She was there, stuck between 2 worlds, dead to them, alive in spite of them. Everyone left. All except Henri, the gravedigger. A solitary old man with a piercing gaze. Henri was accustomed to the silence of the dead. But that day, something intrigued him. Unease in the air, a doubt in his chest. He lingered, long after the last car had left the cemetery. He circled the coffin that had remained lying near the grave. An intuition, a feeling. He placed his hand on the wood. Then he put his ear to it. A breath? A whisper? He didn't know. He carefully opened the coffin's lock, lifted the lid. And there, in the darkness, he saw Elise move her lips. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, but alive. His heart skipped a beat. He took a step back, then stepped closer again, trembling, frightened, but amazed. She was returning from the world of the dead. And he knew, deep down, that he had just saved a truth that we wanted to bury. When Elise opened her eyes for good, this time without dizziness or confusion, the pale light of neon stung her retinas. She blinked several times, as if her body had forgotten what it was like to see. The room was white, bare, almost unreal. A nameless, windowless room, hidden in a disused wing of an old provincial hospital. A place that had been forgotten, like her. Sitting by her bed, a familiar figure. Henri, the old gravedigger, watched over her like a guardian between worlds. He held a cup of lukewarm coffee between his trembling fingers. At his side, a man in a white coat nodded gravely at a discreet doctor, a longtime friend of Henri, who had accepted the impossible without asking too many questions. Together, they had decided to keep the secret. "You've come a long way," the doctor murmured. "Very far. Why? Why didn't anyone check? Why did Julien let it happen?" she asked in a hoarse voice, almost foreign to her own ears. "He didn't even demand an autopsy," Henri said. "He signed the papers within the hour." A shiver ran down his spine. Something was wrong. She felt it in her gut. A huge lie, stitched with crocodile tears and public obsequiousness. So she asked for silence. She did not want to exist yet. Not officially. She wanted observer. To understand. And above all, choose the moment when she would be reborn, but on his terms. For several weeks, Elise pretended to be dead. She abandoned her name, her voice, her habits. Henri lent him a small apartment on the outskirts, a dilapidated former caretaker's cottage, hidden behind a derelict cemetery. The place smelled of damp, old pages, and ghosts, but it offered what she no longer had, a roof and a little shade. She cut her long hair, dyed it black, learned to walk differently, to lower her eyes. She took on the identity of her deceased mother, Claire Laville, with false papers that Henri obtained through a discreet old contact. Every day, she reinvented herself. Every night, she cried silently, alone facing the abyss of her stolen life. During this time, Julien, her husband, became a media icon of the inconsolable widower. He appeared in the newspapers, his eyes red, his hands clasped. He spoke of his lost love, of their child who died with her, of the violence of life. He repeated the same words, the same silences, with AC acting talent. By his side, Camille, always there, discreet, self-effacing, but omnipresent. She placed her hand on Julien's shoulder during interviews, looked away in pain. She was perfect in her role as devoted confidant and ghost widow. Elise was no longer the one they had known. The sweet, naive woman had died in that coffin. The one who now lived in that cold shack was a living dead, a hunting spirit. She had been betrayed, buried alive, robbed of her life and her child. She was only waiting for one thing, the truth. And to justice, Henri helped him hire a former private detective, Armand Lefebvre, a man with rough manners, a face lined with age, but whose sharp intelligence shone beneath his constant irony. A former cop turned cop after an unsolved scandal, he knew the dark recesses of the human soul. He accepted, after a long silence, seeing Elise's eyes. "I've seen ghosts before, but never ones this determined." Armand quickly followed the clues, delved into the details of the case. And the first anomalies emerged like bones from under the turned-over earth. A medical prescription falsified in the name of Elise for a powerful sedative called Dormexil, a drug reserved for severe neurological disorders, sometimes administered to induce comas. Artificial. Of the internet searches disturbing found in the history of a Google account linked to Camille. Signs of clinical death. How long can the heart stop without damage? How to induce a stop temporary heart attack. A modified life insurance due weeks before the alleged death, with the new sole beneficiary, Julien Dubois. But what finally broke Elise was the video. A file was discreetly recovered from a USB drive left in a luxury hotel room, thanks to a complicit employee. A seemingly ordinary video at first glance. Julien and Camille, naked, relaxed, laughing together on an unmade bed. A long-standing, intimate complicity. 2 years, Armand learned. 2 years of lies. 2 years of slow poisoning, of meticulous calculations. Then the words. The ones that split his soul. As soon as she left, I felt relief. No sadness, relief. Camille replied with a light, almost satisfied laugh. Now all that's left is to erase the rest. Elise felt her throat tighten. She saw again the smiles, the confidences, the nights shared dreaming of the future. And yet, from the beginning, she was alone. But now, she was no longer a victim. She was the ghost who was going to return, not to haunt, but to destroy their masks. Elise realized she couldn't just reappear. Not yet, not like that. She had seen in Julian's eyes, that day at the church, a total absence of regret and guilt. He had let her die, willingly or not, and that suited him. He lived better this way. Free. But he was going to pay for this freedom. No. Come back, knock on the door, and shout the truth in his face? That would be too soft, too brief. She didn't want to confront him. She wanted to break him down. She then decided to call on a woman whom even some ministers feared. Maya Roche, an investigative journalist feared for her incisive investigations into power networks, institutional corruption, and silent crimes. Maya was not affiliated with any major media outlet. She worked alone, protected by a close circle of collaborators and an armored digital network. Elise contacted her under a pseudonym. She told her story, proving its veracity with disturbing evidence. The falsified prescription, the video, the fake death certificate. Maya was skeptical at first, then captivated. They met at night, in a former photo studio converted into an archive room. There, Elise made him swear to secrecy. She wanted to reveal everything, but at the right time. When the truth would hit hardest. When it would be a blade, not just a news item. Maya agreed. In exchange, she would have world exclusivity. And meanwhile, Elise went on the attack. She wrote a simple letter. Handwritten. On aged paper. One sentence, scathing. I'm closer than you think. No signature. No indication. Just this suspended threat, delivered to Julian's personal address. The reaction was immediate. Julian tried to laugh at first, but it quickly died in his throat. His hands were shaking. He refused to talk to Camille about it. He searched their house. He checked the security cameras. He installed a state-of-the-art alarm system. He erased his phone history, changed his number, and asked a lawyer to review the estate file. More fear had crept in. He no longer slept. He ate only automatically. At work, his colleagues found him tense, angry, and sometimes absent. He jumped at the slightest bell. Something was eating away at him. Camille, for her part, watched this slow decline with concern. At first, she thought it was a case of grief being poorly digested. But she quickly realized he was hiding something from her. She searched, questioned, and the more questions she asked, the further Julian moved away. Their complicity, built on betrayal, was no match for fear. And then Maya published the premiere article. The tone was neutral, professional. The subject, cases of deaths declared without autopsy, and administrative irregularities in certain town halls. Among the cases mentioned, a young pregnant woman who died suddenly at 8 months of pregnancy, buried without legal confirmation. Just one example among others. But the dates, the place, and the first name, Elise, were enough to alert attentive observers. Those who remembered the story, the collective emotion, Julian's moving interviews. Online forums were abuzz. Hashtags emerged. Theories. Suspicions. Julian, increasingly paranoid, tried to pressure the article to be withdrawn. He sent letters from lawyers. But Maya was unassailable. Nothing was defamatory. Everything was documented. Then a second article appeared. More incisive. He mentioned a possible falsification of a medical prescription in the victim's name. An inconsistent signature. Anomalies in the death certificates. A source anonymous described as very close to the case claimed that no autopsy had been requested by the husband, despite suspicious circumstances. Julian became a nervous ghost. Her work faltered. Some partners cut ties. Invitations became rare. Camille, confronted with her own compromised research, the internet history she had improperly deleted, was summoned by the police as part of an unexplored case. She understood that everything could collapse. And while the castle of lies was cracking, Elise moved forward. Discreetly. Sharp patience. Blurry silhouettes in the corners of the cameras. Shadows in Julian's reflections. And soon, she would no longer be a whisper. Soon, she would be a scream. Eventually, Elise arranged for her own resurrection. She didn't want a quiet return. Not this time. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was a deliverance. A truth to be set free. With Maya, she prepared every detail, location, timing, security. A simple but elegant room, a live broadcast on social media, journalists invited blindly under the guise of a conference on judicial corruption. When the day came, the atmosphere was thick with mystery. Cameras were rolling, and online streams already counted hundreds of thousands of curious viewers. Maya, sitting upright at her lectern, spoke in a calm voice, but tense with emotion. Tonight, we will witness a unique moment. A woman, believed to be dead, has chosen to break the silence. She is here, alive, to tell her story. A breath ran through the room. Then, slowly, Elise entered. First, a rustling. Whispers. Frozen faces. Wide open eyes. She moved forward slowly, the belly always rounded, dressed in a simple, almost solemn black dress. Her gaze was straight, piercing like a blade, and yet of a strange peace. A mixture of contained fury and regained dignity. Screams erupted in the room. Some were crying. Others couldn't believe it. The effect was overwhelming. In homes and on screens, the public witnessed the unthinkable. At his house, Julian collapsed. Sitting on his sofa, a glass in his hand, he watched the conference distractedly, until Elise's face appeared on the screen. His body collapsed. He couldn't breathe. He screamed. He threw the remote control. But the image remained. She was there, alive, and she spoke. Camille, who was with him, runs away from home. She understood at that moment that there would be no more escape. On stage, Elise spoke. Her voice trembled at first, but it quickly gained strength, carried by righteous anger, the memory of icy nights, of loneliness, of injustice. She told it all. I was poisoned. My vital signs slowed. They falsified the papers. Julian refused the autopsy. Camille drugged me. They planned my death like a plan, a strategy. She spoke of the evidence. The documents. The video. Camille's research. Julian's manipulations. Dirty hands that had tried to close a living coffin. The crowd listened silently. And throughout the world, indignation was raging. That same evening, on the orders of the prosecutor, Julian was arrested. Camille, already on the run, was found the next day in a house rented under a false name. She offered no resistance. The judicial inquiry was opened urgently. The charges were serious: attempted murder, fraud, forgery, endangering the life of others. The evidence accumulated by Elise, Armand, and Maya formed an implacable case. A few weeks later, in a room bathed in light, Elise gave birth to a perfectly healthy baby girl. The baby had dark, calm eyes, as if she already knew. Elise named her Hope, because that was what carried her when everything seemed over. Julian was sentenced to 12 years in prison, without the possibility of early release. Camille received 8 years, accompanied by a 5-year professional ban. But Elise's real victory was not found in a verdict. It was his return to life. In the Renaissance, she was no longer the sweet, naive woman they had manipulated. She had become stronger than death itself, a survivor, a mother, a voice that would never be silenced again. When a journalist asked her how she felt about this second chance, Elise smiled gently. Then she replied simply, I was buried alive, but I decided not to die. And this sentence, captured by the cameras, became a symbol, reprised, shared, written on walls, tattooed on skin. The testimony of a woman who was tried to be silenced, and who had chosen, instead of dying, to be reborn to break the silence.